Okay, I'm keeping the chat open. So you guys can ask questions if you have any thing to clarify. And another thing to mention, this subject, the material provided to you have some printing mistakes. So maybe you will get confused with them. So if you, I also don't know all the mistakes that it has. So if you get confused with the material you have, just put me an email. Okay, so I think a few students emailed me explaining how to get this derivation and all. They are actually having some printing mistakes. So better to email. So I will clarify. Okay, and I will start the presentation now. And my name is Shalita, and let's start. Today we are going to cover three sections. The first, we are going to cover measurement of capacitance, then we are going to cover measurement of inductance, and then we are going to cover measurement of frequency. So this we have 6 sections left. So today I'm covering 3, and another 3 I will be covered in the day school 3. Okay, so I think you all have seen a capacitor, right? So usually everybody has seen a capacitor. So maybe some of you have used those capacitors to do like small projects and all. So like a capacitor, so the definition of capacitor is it is a device that stores electrical energy in an electric field. So in here, the best way to understand what is the electric field means, I think all of you guys have experienced that static electricity, right? Like when you rub two materials and both of them get charged, like one get charged as positive, another one get charged as negative, then they will attach each other, and sometimes you will get a shock from static charge, usually not in Sri Lanka, but in other low humid countries, you will get shocks from electric static fields. So these capacitors store that static energy, static electric energy. So like in the ideal capacitor, if you consider ideal capacitor, it should retain its charge unchanged as long as it is not connected to a circuit. So that means like if it has no losses and it is, if we kept it away, it will keep it charged indefinitely. But usually this will not happen. What will happen is like you have a lot of losses in a capacitor. We have, you know, this is the construction of a capacitor. Usually we have two plates, and in between there will be a dielectric material, and these are the terminals of the capacitor, or leads of the capacitor, you know, positive and negative if it is a polar capacitor. And so these leads will have a resistance, and this dielectric material will have some leakages. So we can represent these things as resistances. So see in here, the leakages we observe in dielectric material, we represent using this leakage resistance. This is what we have represented here, and this is actually parallel to the capacitor. So in here this is drawn like this, but if you get it, if you observe it carefully, it is something like this. That means it is parallel. So and the other one is we have when you work these capacitors in high frequencies, these lead resistances, they may exhibit some inductive properties, you know. In high frequencies or even in lower frequencies, these coils, they tend to create magnetic fields around it. Okay, so you know, I think you have learned these things in A levels. So if you have a conductor and current passing by, there will be a magnetic field like generating around it. So what happens is it stores some of this passing energy in this magnetic field. So it is acting as an inductor. So here I am getting a question, what is a leakage resistance? Leakage resistance means like we have, let's say you have positive and negative terminals. So we do not mean to short these terminals, but there will be some leakages like through air. So you can have these terminals can form a capacitor. So there will be leakages from positive to negative. So that is what called the leakage resistance. So in here, this dielectric material will have leakages, some leakages. So it will pass ions from one plate to another without storing it. So when it passes through passes from one plate to another, it will discharge. So that is what happening in a circuit. So if we take this is positive and this is negative, so you create a path from here to here. This energy stored in this capacitor will pass through, but if you have some resistance in this path, so it will dissipate as energy. So that's what leakage resistance is in this case. So in this case, the leakage resistance is in here. This is a very high resistance, so the current is very low. That's why it is called a leakage resistance. Okay. So so now we identified three loss types that we can observe in a capacitor. The first one is from these dielectric materials, and the second one is from these resistances. So this one only acts when this is connected. Okay, so this is this mentions about the resistance of these leads or terminals. So if it is connected to some circuit, if there's some connection between them, the energy stored in this capacitor will dissipate through resistances in this terminals. And the next one is inductance of connection leads. So as I explained earlier, when you work with high frequencies, these tend to act as inductors. So when you have high frequencies, there will be higher magnetic fields generating around these terminals. So it will act as inductor, and that will cause losses. And so this inductance losses, we do not consider them in every case. We consider them in some cases only in very high frequencies. So for the model of this capacitor, we only use this lead resistance and leakage through dielectric material. So then if you remove this part, you have a resistor configuration, and to represent all the losses causing from this lead resistance and leakage to dielectric materials, what we do is we replace both of these resistances as a equivalent series resistance. So that's what we have done here. So this equivalent series resistance will account for all the losses caused by this lead resistance and leakage through dielectric materials. Okay, so that's what you should know about the model of capacitance and how these capacitors are constructed. In this module, it mainly considered about measurements. So now we are going to see how these capacitance are measured. Before that, so we talked about losses here, right? So we have several loss components in a capacitor. So if we have a lot of losses, that means that capacitor is not very good quality, right? So we should like have a factor or like some kind of value to determine the quality of this capacitor. So for that, we define dissipation factor or loss angle. So in here, what we do is we take the ratio of this equivalent series resistance and capacitive reactance. So you know, in this capacitor, this capacitance reactance is the useful part, right? So this part is useful. So this part it accounts for losses. So this is not useful, right? So we define this dissipation factor to as a measurement of losses to the useful, like how much it how much losses it has compared to the useful capacitor reactance we have. So usually, you know, capacitor reactance, the j omega c, this changes with frequency, right? So usually this D, dissipation factor or loss angle, is defined for specific frequencies. This frequency changes with the capacitor type. I exactly don't remember the frequencies, but there are some frequencies for ceramic capacitors, and other capacitor types will have different frequencies where this dissipation factor is defined, and this is also called loss angle. So if you observe okay, what is J means in J omega C? You guys are not purely electrical, right? Okay, I think all of you guys did maths, right? Can you answer? Did all of you guys did maths? I think all of otherwise you can't do engineering in OSL, right? Yes. Okay. So you remember complex numbers, right? In A levels, you did complex numbers, right? So complex numbers in electrical, when we have something called active and reactive components. Okay. Can you guys see the screen? I got an error message. Are you guys seeing this screen? Okay. Okay. So when it comes to electrical basics, you know, we have three types of components, right? We have resistors. So usually we sorry. This is R. Then we have capacitors. Then we have inductors. Okay. So these resistive components, these are active. So these are active components. And this accounts for the active power of a power system. And these account for passive. These are called passive and reactive. Have you guys learned about these things? Active power, reactive power. You guys are still first year, right? I forgot that. So like, have you guys learned about these active components like active power, reactive power, imaginary components of, I think it is learned in A level. So you may remember in A levels, we had I for representing complex numbers, right? So in here, so you know this I is a vector. It is 90 plus 90 degrees aligned from this real number vector, right? So in electrical, our resistive components are in this x-axis, and our reactive components, we usually address them by x, they are in y-axis. So we easily use this representation to represent these components in a system. Okay, so we can easily represent this by, so this is 90 degrees r plus jx. J, so we do not use I because we have I. What is I in electrical? It's current, right? So we will get confused with I. So therefore we replace J with I. I think I have answered your question. I think these things are explained in another subject, right? In I think so, because this is measurements. this should be explained in circuit theory or like electrical systems or some kind of subject, because I am not a graduate from Open University. I think there will be a subject to teach you these things. Okay, so now I'm going to continue for the lesson. Okay, I will. So you guys can go through the lecture again, because I'm providing the recording. I will remove these parts, because otherwise when you are getting the presentation, you will get confused. Okay, so we were talking about loss and useful components of a capacitor, right? So we take the ratio of it, and so capacitance, capacitor reactance is given by this factor, this equation, and when you draw a power triangle, so you draw a power triangle, not a power triangle, it is let's say it's a system triangle. We have this R here, so this is ESR. Oh, sorry. Okay, so in here, so when it comes to loss angle, it is defined as ESR over capacitor reactance X, right? So, this is how you define the loss angle. Loss angle is like equal to tan delta. So it is ESR over capacitor reactance. This is X. This is actually, I think, given in the book. You guys can refer to it and get this get more understanding. For now, don't worry about this loss angle. I actually got a bit confused, because usually R we have P here, Q here, and S here. So P is for R and Q is for Q, usually for X. And in here, this loss angle, it should be in the opposite direction. I think it is explained in the book. You guys can refer to it and get the understanding, but don't worry about it. Like, you should only know about the dissipation factor. So it is usually the ratio of ESR into ESR divided by capacitance, capacitive reactance. And with this dissipation factor, the opposite of it is defined as quality factor. It is Q, 1 over D. Okay, so and usually in when you take a capacitor, we usually consider about dissipation factor to get an understanding about how this how good the capacitor is. Okay, I hope everybody understood that. And now we are going to talk about the measurement part. So that up to here it is theory. Now we are going to go to the most important sections of this lecture, the measurements. So I know you guys have used these bridges to do measurements of resistances and other things, right? So these all these bridges are derived from the Wheatstone bridge basic concept. And in here also we have D Sawtey's bridge. So this is a very simple bridge we can use to calculate the estimate the value of an unknown capacitance. So in here in the arm one, so you guys know the standard notation, right? This is arm 1, this is arm 2, this is arm 3, this is arm 4. So you know in the Wheatstone bridge concept, when you are in the what is it's called, the balance condition. Balance condition means this is a galvanometer. When this shows 0, this shows the reading as 0, we know the voltage values here are equal. If you say this is A and this is B, VA equals VB, so there will be no current flowing to any direction to this section. So therefore we say the so you also know in here this is VCCO positive, and we can say in here we can't say this because this is a AC bridge. We say this is V negative. Let's say V line V negative. Okay. So you know the voltage differences between these 2 points are constant, right? So to be this point's voltage and this point voltage to be equal, you know, these resistances should fulfill this condition. Okay. So we use that principle to derive expressions for the Sawtey's bridge. So it is very easy, but this is a very simple bridge. This the main disadvantage of this bridge is this complete disregard of the losses in the capacitor. So it we practically cannot have lossless capacitors. Therefore, in practice, we cannot take balance condition in D Sawtey's bridge because it will not get into balance, because there will be some resistance here. To compensate for that, there will be no resistance here. So we can derive the expression simply for D Sawtey's bridge. There will be limitations. I think you guys have answered about this in your TMA also. And so you know this. Now I will explain how to derive this equation. So Z1, so you know capacitive reactance 1 over J omega C1, Z2 1 over J omega C2. So when you divide these two, you will get this expression. I think all of you understood that, right? J omega C2 over J omega C1 equals R3 over R4. And so you know J omega will cancel out. You will left with this. And so what we have to find is C1. So we adjust the equation to get C1 and C2 over R4 over R3. So I think you all everyone understood how to derive this equation. Okay. Now the main drawback. So in practical cases, we can't use this D Sawtey's bridge because with all the capacitors will have inherent losses and it will not balance. So it will be very hard to obtain a balance with this D Sawtey's bridge. And so to rectify this issue, what we do is, so we know this component is there. This is called ESR, right? So to compensate for that, we add another variable resistor here. So earlier we only have one variable component, it is C2. So we change C2 to obtain balance, and we take this. So at the balance, we know this. We should have this condition fulfilling. So we write equations and arrive at the answer. But in here, you have you have considered about the ESR, and to compensate for that, we have added a variable resistor here to compensate for that. So in here, it is little bit difficult to get the expressions for the balance condition. So the current through this point will be 0, and you will have this condition. And for the arm 1, we can easily write. So R plus 1 over j omega C1. For the arm 2, it is R2 plus 1 over j omega C2. So we can put these expressions here, and we have these values. So these are only active components, R3 and OR4. And so after that, after like adjusting this equation, you will arrive at here. You will arrive at here, and you have, this is real component and this is imaginary component. So this is real, this is imaginary. This is real, this is imaginary. So in complex numbers, you can equate. So let's say this is Z. So real Z, and let's say this is Z dash, and this is Z double dash. Z dash will be equal to Z double dash. Imaginary Z dash will be equal to imaginary Z double dash. So in maths you have learned about this. And so after getting using these equations to these complex numbers, you can arrive at these expressions. Do everybody understand this? Can someone answer how to arrive at these expressions? Just put yes in the chat if you understand. If you have not understand how to arrive at these answers, put no. I think it is very simple, right? So you have two complex numbers equating, so real component should be equal and imaginary component should be equal. Okay, understood. Thank you. And okay. So now using the modified D-Sawtooth bridge, we can calculate the ESR also, measure the ESR also. This components account for ESR. This is the capacitive. This is X actually. Okay. So this is modified D-Sawtooth bridge. And okay, there are some other bridges you can also use to measure the capacitance. One of them is this Shearing bridge. So this is pronounced as Shearing. Okay, some people say shearing. This is Shearing. Okay, so the Shearing bridge, it is somewhat different. So earlier we had very like easy to understand visuals, right? So in here we have a capacitor, we have a resistor, in here we have a variable capacitor, and here variable resistor. So you will able to obtain the balance. So in here they have thought outside the box, and they have tried to obtain the balance condition with parallel capacitor and resistor components in arm 3. So in here also at the balance, this condition should fulfill, right? Z1 over Z2 should be equal to, this is Z1, this is Z2, Z3, Z4. So this, if your bridge is in balance, this should be fulfilled. So after obtaining the balance, you just apply the equations. So Z1 R1 plus 1 over j omega C. So you can easily, this component in here, the XC1 comes to 1 over j omega C1. Here, this will be j omega C2, 1 over. And you can easily write these expressions and get the get the condition, and you guys can just like take adjust the equation and get this expression. So in here what they have done is, so they have directly put Z4 here without deriving the value for Z4 in and they have derived it here. So 1 over, so this is a parallel resistor configuration. 1 over Z is equal in here 1 over R4. So let's say this is Z4. 1 over Z4 equals 1 over R4 plus 1 over, so what is the reactance of this impedance? We can say reactance of this component. It is given by 1 over j omega C4, right? So this is 1 over j omega C4. It comes as j omega C4. That's how you get this expression. Okay, so then what they have done directly is they have taken the cross multiplication and they have applied the value for Z4 here. So this component is Z4. So then the same scenario, we equate real component and imaginary component. So from real component, you arrive at this. From imaginary component, you arrive at this. Okay, and yes. Okay, so you remember, so in here they have derived the equation for dissipation factor also. So in here, what is the dissipation factor? It is ESR over X, right? XC. So we are considering this bridge, this arm 1. So ESR we know R1 and XC we know 1 over j omega C1. So same as earlier, we can get D as R1 j omega C1. So usually dissipation factor we take as absolute value. So we can easily neglect this j and it will come to omega R1 C1. Okay, so that's how you arrive at this equation. And so you have already found these values from these equations. So we apply them. So R1 is so in here R1 comes to R4 C2 R3. No, C1 comes to R4 C2 R3. So it is this expression, and R1 come to C4 R3 C2. It is it this expression? Yeah, we have this component here and this component here. So yeah, this is correct. So D equals omega into this value and this value. So usually you do not have to apply the values like this. What you have to do is just calculate C1 when you have these values, and then calculate R1 when you have these values, then just apply for this equation. So that's how you calculate dissipation factor from this shearing bridge. Okay, so I think you have like heard about this permittivity in your A levels. The permittivity is the ability of holding charge. So it is defined for this so this is the construction of a capacitor. So in here, this is the dielectric material. So the ability of holding charge is defined for this dielectric material. Using the bridges we have discussed earlier, we can easily measure the permittivity of a material. Actually, we are measuring relative permittivity. So it is called epsilon R. So I think you guys have learned this equation in your A levels. So usually if you have two plate configuration as a capacitor, let's say both plates are equal and the thickness is D. And your capacitance will be given by the permittivity of the material. I will just put it as epsilon and A over D. So in here, the permittivity of material is usually expressed as relative permittivity of that material and epsilon naught. So this is a constant. Epsilon naught, this comes to 8.85 into 10 to the power minus 12. So this is the permittivity of air. So we define relative permittivity of a material as relative to the air as this number. So what we can do is when we are doing when we need to estimate the permittivity of a material, we define a setup with a non area. So first we define the setup. So we cannot get a capacitor and do this permittivity calculation because we don't know A and what D. So we don't know because capacitor is already constructed. So sometimes the data sheet will give you these values, but most of the time you will not find these values. So we should have to have a setup which we know the area of the plate and the distance between plates. So after, if you know these two things, and then we can use any of the bridges we constructed or like explained earlier and find C, right? So we, after deriving the setup, we just connect it to the bridge. We take these two terminals and connect to the bridge, and we use any of these bridges to measure the capacitance. So after finding the capacitance, we can use this equation and find relative permittivity. So that's how you find the relative permittivity of a material. Okay, now we are going to discuss about, we are going to do a small example on modified de Sauté's bridge. So that's all these are the main things you should know when it comes to instrumentation and measurements, but there are a lot of information given in the materials. So go through this and you will understand these things very easily. Okay, and about the dissipation factor, you can search internet and find out how these tan delta values are defined. And so now let's do a small example. I think you have done a small example like this in your TMA also, but let's do another one. And so in here we have a modified de Sauté's bridge. So the term is, you should know the term because there's a de Sauté's bridge and the modified de Sauté's bridge. So the expressions of both can be different. So you should pay attention to what is the bridge type. So this is modified de Sauté's bridge, right? Okay. So it says, so arm 1 consists of an imperfect capacitor. That means it has losses. So if we have losses, we cannot use de Sauté's bridge. We can only use the shearing bridge or modified de Sauté's bridge. And so the imperfect capacitor, then ESR is also given as a value, that is R1, and the arm 3 will have non-inductive resistance R3, and arm 4 is non-inductive resistance R4, and arm 2 is a capacitor C2 in series with R2. So if you go back to the modified de Sauté's bridge, in the arm 1 we have the unknown imperfect capacitor. So in here it is given as C1 and R1, the same notation as here. So in the arm 3, it is non-inductive resistance R3. So it's just a resistance, right? See, this is just a resistance. And in arm 4, also resistance. Okay. And in arm 2, there's a capacitor C2 and series resistor R2. So in here we have given the values for the balance. So in the balance, I think we already discussed these equations. We can obtain these equations. And at the balance, the values are given. You are asked to determine the unknown capacitance and loss factor. So it is very easy. So when you are asked to derive for the unknown capacitance, and you should pay attention. So in here, it is imperfect capacitor with C1 with ESR. Okay, so ESR is also given. So we have to find ESR also. So we have to use both the equations. So we have use these equations. The R2 is 5.2 and R3 2000, R4 2850. So you have taken R1 as 3.65. So this is the ESR. So when you are asked to calculate unknown capacitance, you also have to find the ESR also. And so then we are asked to then we have to find the capacitance. So we have the equation C1 is equal C2 or R4 R3. So C2 is given 0.5 microfarad and R4 2850 and 2000, and we can find our capacitance to be 0.712. Yeah. So now we have found the unknown capacitance, but in here there's some data missing. So if you need to calculate the loss factor, there should be the omega value given. So in here, take omega as 300 radians per second. So we can find loss factor, or D, omega C1 R1. So 300 into, we have C 0.712 into 10 to the power minus 6 and 3.65. So if you multiply this, you will get the loss factor or dissipation factor. Okay, that's how you do the example using this modified D-Soltis bridge. Okay, now let's do an example using Shearing bridge. So in here, so this Shearing bridge, this is usually used in high frequency measurements. So search about it. I think in the book also you have some information given, but when you search about this stuff, you learn more. So search about it and find out why this Shearing bridge is used in high frequencies and what are the other applications, and those things you can find. Okay, so now we can do a example using Shearing bridge. So in here also we have to find the permittivity. So permittivity of a dielectric material. So we'll see how we can do it. Okay, so as I explained earlier, they have given the thickness. As I explained earlier, we have to define what? We have to define our test setup. So otherwise we don't know any of these values. So we should know D and A. So in here we know D. So D is known and area. So the plate area is also known. So you know the setup will be something like this. So we are forming a capacitor. So D is this thickness and plate area. This is A. So we usually consider these two are equal. Okay. So we'll see how we can determine the permittivity of this material. And this setup is connected to a shearing bridge. So connected to the arm one of shearing bridge, and remaining arms have convention notation. So when you see convention notation, you should know 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and R3 is a non-reactive resistor with a value of 5 kilo ohms. Okay, we'll refer to this and see. So in here, this is 5 kilo ohms, and R4 is non-reactive resistor of 5.5 kilo ohms in parallel with C4. So that means this bridge. So this is 5.5, and C4 value is given as 1000 picofarads, and C2 fixed capacitor of 800 picofarad. C2, yeah, the bridge 2. So you know where these capacitors and resistors are, right? So when I give a questions in the CAT or any TMA, I do not usually give you the bridge. I will give you the values using this notation. So you should know where you should put them. So now we know where we have these values, and it is in standard form, right? So as we tested earlier, all the things are in standard form. So then we can use these equations. So I have included all the equations here. So when you need to determine permittivity, we need to find the capacitance first, right? So let's find out the capacitance. So capacitance is given by R4 C2 over R3. So R4 is given, R4 is 5.5, and C2 is also given 800 picofarad, and R3 also given 5 kilo ohms. So we can find C1 as 880 picofarads. So we found that. Then we can directly go into the relative permittivity calculation, because we all know now. So in the relative permittivity calculation, we only need C, D, and A. So this is a constant. So we know this, and we can directly calculate relative permittivity. So 3.975. So we can take this answer directly. But in here, you have you are also asked to find the dissipation factor as before. So then we need to have R1 also. So R1, C4, R3, or C2, and we can easily apply for this equation and find out the R1. Then you know we have to apply for this equation, D equals omega R1 C1. So you will get the dissipation factor as something like this. Okay, so that's how you do example in here. So even in the exam, you will not get any hard questions. These are the ones you will usually get. Okay. Okay, now we are coming to the inductance. So we have now discussed about the capacitance. Now we are going to discuss about measurement of inductance. So earlier, remember, I told you the capacitor stores energy as what? Electric field, right? Capacitor usually stores energy in an electric field. But when it comes to inductors, they store energy in a magnetic field. As I explained earlier, when something is conducting, usually a coil, let's say it's a coil, there will be a magnetic field around it. So there is some energy stored in that. So it will exhibit some resistance, not reactive values. Like when you have a magnetic field developed around a conductor, you cannot push more current through it. You can, but it will be harder. That is what we call inductance. Okay, so inductance cannot have sudden current changes. So you have to have very small changes in current when it comes to inductance. Also drops. So if you disconnect the inductor from a working circuit, there will be arcs. So let's say this is connected somewhere and this is a switch. So if you disconnect this switch in a sudden movement, there will be arcs. So when you disconnect a circuit, you first have to reduce the load in a, you know, in like steps, like a gradient. Then when you come to a low value, you can disconnect the inductor. Otherwise, there will be sudden arcs jumping in these terminals. So usually inductor is a wire coil. So there will be induced magnetic field around it when it is conducting. So usually if your current is flowing in this direction, so in here this current is flowing in this direction, that means to here the current flow is in here, your magnetic field will generate, and due to that magnetic field there will be a EMF, electromotive force generated among this coil. So that will be in the other direction. So your voltage developed will be in the opposite direction. So that is what a inductor is. And when it comes to practical inductors, similar to the capacitance, there will be losses. And these are the losses you can see in an inductor, the finite resistance of the inductor winding. So you know, as I said, inductor is simply a coil. So coil is usually made out of conductive material which is having a resistance. So there will be a finite resistance here. So we usually put it as a series resistor. Actually, it is series, and this is the series resistance of the inductor. That's how we model that part. Then when you have coils like this, there are small gaps here, right? So these are not touching, and in between there will be air or some material. So usually ceramic or something is covered up, like you have seen an inductor, right? It is something like a resistor, and this coil is covered by some material. So when you have something like this, so you know there will be some potential difference between these 2 points, right? So this will form a capacitor. So so between coils, that means coil turns, there will be capacitances, small capacitances due to materials you have here and the small voltage difference. So if you have 5 volts here and 0 volts here, I'm just taking example. So there will be something, let's say 4 here, 3 here. So there will be 1 volt difference. So there will be a capacitance formed in these two, in between these two turns. So therefore, in the model, we have to also include this capacitance value also. So you know, if you take an inductor, so from this here also you can get the understanding. So this is, if you take these 2 points, this is a parallel capacitance, right? Because it is in between turns. So we have to add a parallel capacitance to the model also. But usually this parallel capacitance is only considered in very high frequencies, usually in gigahertz levels, very high frequencies, because you know capacitive reactance 1 over j omega c, very high frequencies omega is very high and Xc becomes very low. So this is parallel to the inductor, and if Xc becomes very low, what happens? This will short circuit the inductor. So there will be no use. Therefore, you have to consider this parallel capacitance in high frequencies. In lower frequencies, this effect is negligible. Okay, I have a question. Sir, why this capacitance is parallel instead of series? Yeah, that's what I explained earlier. See, so here you have a winding. Okay, I'm sorry for my drawing skills. So this capacitance is formed in between these turns. Can you understand? Capacitance is in between these turns. So in here also, this is due to this small voltage difference. Usually this will be in millivolts or microvolts. So this is, there will be very small voltage difference in between these turns, right? So first say, do you understand this inductor is just a coil? Inductance is just a coil, right? So in between these coil turns, these are coil turns, there will be capacitors. So if you observe closely, these are parallel, see? So inductor is here, the parallel, these are going parallel. So if you take a whole coil, this will be something like this. That's why we use the capacitor in parallel. Okay, I hope you have understand it. Okay, moving on. Okay. Okay. So now we are coming to the first bridge we can use to measure the inductance. Okay, so this is called Anderson bridge. This is somewhat different from the bridges you have seen earlier, right? So like there are like you have the main four arms, but there are some additional components here. Okay, you have the arm 1, arm 2, arm 3, arm 4 here, and there will be some other part here also, right? So in here we cannot directly apply the our golden golden condition. We cannot apply Z1 over Z2 equals Z3 over Z4, because our voltage equilibrium is between these 2 points B and E. So you can apply this if the voltage equilibrium is in D and B. Okay, now it is a bit different. So what we do is we balance the circuit and we get the expression only using currents. No, you can actually use voltages also, but it is very simple. When you have the equilibrium, you just define current pathways and all. So let's say this bridge is in balance condition. So that means VB is equal VE. These 2 points are in equal potential. So let's say our I1 current, I1 means this current, I1. So if this is in equilibrium, there will be no current through this path. So I1 goes to the third arm. So I1 will be equal I3. So we can understand this. And I2, I2 is the current through this arm. So I2 is coming here. So so in here, even though there's no current here, but there will be a current here. So this current goes through here, and there will be no division here. The current will go through the capacitor. So current through capacitor is IC. So therefore this current should also be IC. So this current goes through this path. And I2, so IC is going here, and then I4 is the current through this path. So I2 will, so you can easily apply what nodal the KCL, and I2 equals I4 plus IC. I think you understood that, right? I2 is coming here, Kirchhoff current law, I4, IC. Okay. There's a question, sir, can both recording and the presentation be uploaded to the LMS? Yes, I will be uploading presentation to the LMS, and we cannot upload recordings to the LMS. I will upload it to somewhere, YouTube or Google Drive or somewhere, and put the link in the LMS. Okay. Okay. So what happens here is now we have derived current equations. Now so we had the voltage equilibrium. So we have CD. The next expression is CD equals CED. Let's see how this comes. CD is the voltage across this CD bridge or the arm 4, and CED is this bridge. So looking at this, you can easily get this connection, right? This relationship you can easily get by looking at the Anderson bridge. Then we have another one, ADE equals AB. So ADE, what is ADE? A here, D here, and E here. So voltage through this path, ADE. So this voltage, so we already have defined that VB equals VE. So this is VAB, this is VADE. So this one we also can get by looking at the Anderson bridge. So so now what we have to do is we can write equations for these voltages. So VCD. So you can easily like write a VCD equations. I think I have not included the equations here, but in the material we have provided to you, there will be this expression, the deriving this expression is a very long one. So that's why I did not include that, but like you can easily go through the derivation, and finally you will arrive at this equation. So this is in the in the shape we need. So we have to get real part and imaginary part and equate them and get the expressions. So from this equation you can get the real part and imaginary part and get these two equations. So the derivation for this is bit not hard actually, bit long. That's why I did not include that, but very easy. You can just go through it and understand. So, and the other one is, so in here this R is the series resistance of the inductor, and this is a non-resistor. We put it here. It is usually done by us, so we know what is this resistor is. So in here the resistance R, the inductor, the series resistance of the inductor is a very low value. That's why we put another resistor here. So when after putting that, we can get this system into equilibrium and easily get these expressions. And after that, after getting the so you usually get the expression for R plus R, the capital R plus R, then some equation here, and so you subtract R1 from the expression you get. So we cannot say this is X, but okay, this is just for the expression. So we cannot say this is X because it is not based on X. Usually it will be something R and C and something. Okay, so that's how we did arrive at this expression. So that is Anderson bridge, somewhat difficult than other bridges, but go through the book and understand. Okay, so there's a question. So what is the difference between inductor and coil? Both are same. Yes, actually, both are same. So if you place a inductor, is actually a coil. We also call it a choke coil. So these are all uh, like similar words for an inductor. So this is the coil actually. So you know how a transformer works, right? Transformer is made out of what? Coils, right? But it is actually inductive coupling. So there are high voltage coil and low voltage coil, and there will be magnetic coupling between these two, and you will get different voltages in these 2 points. So inductor is just a coil. Okay. Okay. So okay, moving on. So now we are going to look at a bit simple bridge for measuring inductance. This is called Owen's bridge. So like not like earlier, this is very simple. You can this is in the form we like. So like there are no additional arms going around in this bridge. So this has our inductor here, and we have two variable components and fixed components. So in here we can easily use our uh, balance condition Z1 over Z2 equals Z3 over Z4 and arrive at the answer. But in here, you see, just no, I have not included that R here. So the series reactance is not here. Actually, it is also included here. So what we do is, after finding the R1, uh, actually R1 is known. So after finding the full like equivalent resistance, we can say equivalent resistance, because the value given here, this even though I have given this as R1, this will be R1 plus R. Okay. So okay, let's remove that, otherwise you guys will get confused. Mm. Okay, we can just say this is equal R plus R. So if you need to calculate the R, what you do is R3 over C4 over C2 minus R1. That's how you get the expression. Okay, so I think I do not need to explain how we are going to get this expression, because it is very easy. So in here what they have done is they have taken the cross multiplication. So you know how to get the cross multiplication, right? And they have find out the equivalent impedances and applied those, and uh, same as before, reactive the real part and imaginary part as equated, and they have arrived at these expressions. Okay, now we have a somewhat important, like very important part. So maybe you have already heard about this. This is the mutual inductance. So mutual inductance. So I said that inductance is caused by the magnetic field generated by the current, right? So when you have a magnetic field, I will just say like this. Magnetic field, uh, this is this will show some resilient to flowing current, and that is what we call inductance. Okay, so let's say there's another coil here, but there's no current flowing through this coil, but there's a current flowing through this coil, and it has caused some magnetic field. Okay, I will just put magnetic field like this. Even though there's no current flowing here, what happens is there will be induced voltage in this coil or in this inductor. So this is called mutual inductance. So due to this voltage, there will be a flowing current if you connect this. So this is the basic principle of a transformer. So I know all of you have seen a transformer. So we provide voltage here, and there will be a magnetic coupling, magnetic field generated here. Usually we add a core to this, so it is easy to flow this magnetic field generator. So generated magnetic field will flow through this, and it will couple with this coil, and there will be an induced voltage, and you can easily step up and down voltages. This is called mutual inductance. Okay, that is what mutual inductance is. And we can easily measure mutual inductance, the voltage generated by uh, a nearby coil using this equation. So here the EM is voltage induced by the induced in the second coil. That means in this coil. So this is the primary coil. This is coil 1, coil 2. So is equal. The I1 is current flowing through this coil, and M is the mutual inductance. We are going to define it later, and in this level, in first year level, you are not going to do that much with mutual inductance. But if you guys are going to do electrical, are you all doing electrical? Or I think you guys are still like have to choose, right? I don't know how the process going in open university. Is it like you guys have already defined your subject area, or you guys have to choose it in the second year or the level 4? How is it going in here? Can someone put the answer in chat? Okay, you have already defined. Okay, so now if you have defined, and then you have to select electrical and communication, computer science, and those things, right? So if you do electrical, these things will come very handy, because you will have this mutual inductance things in transmission lines. So you have to be very much careful about it, and you should know how to cancel them out, and those things you will learn in, I think, in level 5. That means in nearly like third year, right? So in level 5 you will get more applications with this mutual inductance. But for now you only need to know what is it. Okay, so just know it is the principle used in transformers. And also now you know that you have those wireless charging mobile phones. Those are also using this principle. In the base you will have a coil, and inside the phone there will be another coil. So energy transfer is done by those two coils. Okay, and we have then Carey-Foster bridge. So this is a special bridge that we can use to define the mutual measure the mutual inductance. So in here we assume the mutual inductance caused by this this coil is M. So it is marked here. So then we have, okay, another thing I forgot to mention. So the equivalent inductance will be self-inductance. Self-inductance is the inherent inductance of this coil. That means the coil will have inductance. So that is self-inductance, and this induced mutual inductance. And so this dot notation is very important when you define this positive or negative sign. So if, let's say, if inductors, both inductors are defined like this, your like if your mutual inductance and self-inductance is defined like this, your sign will be positive, because both the magnetic fields are in same direction, so they will add up. But if it is like this, they will cancel out, not cancel out, they will, the sign will be negative. So in here, see, the mutual inductance sign is in the opposite direction, so you have to go through this line. So this is something like this. I think all of you can see that, right? So when you go through this line, the two dot sign, different locations. That means, so this, in this case, the mutual inductance will reduce actually. So mutual inductance will get reduced from the self inductance. Okay, so so we have this Carey-Foster bridge. In here, we have to use the current to get the expressions. So you know, in I1, in the balance, I1 equals I3, I2 equals I4, and from equating voltages, so you know, you can take I1 R1. So we are equating voltages here. I1 R1 will be equal to I2. So this is the inductance and resistance of voltage caused by the self values. So this is self inductance, and this is the resistor. So you don't have to worry about this. So this is self, and then we have the mutual inductance caused by this. So in here you have to be very careful, because mutual inductance is caused by a some different current, not the current flowing through this path. So it is caused by this coil. So the current through this coil is I1 plus I2. So it has no, so this current has no control over this parameter. So for the mutual inductance, we have to use I1 plus I2, because it is caused by another coil. So in that case, you have to take I1 plus I2, the current flowing through that coil. So what we are going to find is M, which is the amount of mutual inductance caused by this coil. So after getting these equations, you can just adjust the equation to get this form, and then you can easily like get the you know, the real part and imaginary part, and come up with these equations. So in here, our mutual inductance will be given by this equation, and self inductance, we can also measure the self inductance from this bridge. It is also given by, it will be given by this expression. But what we do is, so in here, see, we have some negative the subtracting component, right? R1 plus R4. In here also R1 over some other component, that's, it is like a burden to us, right? So what we do is, we just put this R1 is as 0 ohms. So what will happen if you put R1 as 0? So this will go to 0, and this will also go to 0. So if you put R1 as 0, your equations will get much simplified. So mutual inductance will come like this, and self inductance will come like this. And like if you take the in here, you have a M here, so we can use this equation and adapt it here. So you will get this this expression. So see, there's R3 here, and here's R3. So these two will cancel out. So I will write it here. C4 R2 R3, R3 plus R4 divided by R3. So R3 cancel out. So your L will be C4. L will be this. Okay, I think all of you can understand. Okay. So this is the Carey-Foster bridge. And now let's do a small example on Owen's bridge. So Owen's bridge, it is the easiest one. So I think you'll remember. So we have these like the familiar bridge we all know. So I have included the equations here. So in here it says the arm 1 consists of an imperfect inductor L1 with the non-resistance R1, and arm 3 is non-inductive resistance R3. Arm 3 is here. Arm 3 is this one, so it is non-inductive resistance R3, and arm 4 is capacitor C4, and arm 2 capacitor C2 in series with R2. So this is this is the variable arm, and in here in the balance condition they have given the values to us. So R1 is equal 10 ohms. R1 is actually the non-resistor. So we added resistor here because L1 has a very minimum series resistance. So we will be the adjusting this to get a good balance will be hard. Therefore, we add some other resistor to it. Then it is easier to get the balance. That is the main purpose of this R1 resistor. Otherwise, no use. And R2 is given as 5 ohms. R3 is given as 2000 ohms, and C2 is given as 500 microfarad, and C4 is given as 5 microfarads. Okay, let's see how we can get the values. So L1 is given by R2, R3, and R4. So you know, so R2 is here 5 ohms, R3 is here 2000 ohms, C4 is here 5 microfarad. So after getting that, we can easily calculate our the inductance to be what? Inductance to be 50 millihenry. So do the calculations at home, you will get this answer. Then we have the expression for R1. Actually, this is, as I said earlier, R plus R1. So R plus R1 will come to 2000 into 5 into 10 into, this is 5 microfarads. So it is R3 is 2000, C4 is 5 microfarad, and C2 is 500 microfarad. So you will get 20 ohms as the answer, and then you have to reduce this non-resistor from that value. So you will get 10 ohms. Actually, in here, this question has somewhat larger R. Actually, this should be in milliohms range, but this is just an example, so you guys can understand. Okay. Okay. So now we are coming to measurement of frequency. Okay. So measurement of frequency. So you know, frequency is one of the major parameter we should know, because the main our inductive reactances like all the if you take capacitance, inductance J omega L, if you take capacitance 1 over J omega C. So all of these things have frequency in it. See, so we should know the exact frequency to calculate these parameters. Okay, so there should be a way to calculate the frequency, right? So we can also use those bridges we defined earlier uh, to calculate frequency very easily. So to do that, we define a somewhat like configured bridge called Wien bridge. So in here you have 4 arms as always, and in the balance condition you will get some expression like this. So in here, don't get confused with this. So what we have done is, so this is Z1, so this is Z1 over Z2 equals Z3 over Z4. So Z1 comes as Z1 if you take the parallel configuration. So let's say 1 over Z1 and 1 over 1 1 over R1 plus J omega C1. So this is 1 over J omega C1. So I directly put it here. So that is what we have here. So if you take Z2 upwards, it will be 1 over R1 plus j omega c. So this is what we have here. It is just the Z1. Then we have Z2. Z2 is R2 and 1 over j omega c. Then we have R3 and R4. These are fixed resistors. Okay. Now expanding what we have here, we can see so this is the expression we can derive from this by getting the cross multiplication of this. Then we have to adjust it somehow to have our usual notations to get real values, to get the real real component and imaginary components. So if you observe, so like this is the expanded form. We have R4 in this side, so there's no imaginary component. So our imaginary part is 0 in left side LHS, and in the right side we have some imaginary components. So after getting those, so the we can equate R for our real components. We have this one is real and this one is real, so we can easily equate them and get this expression. But we need to isolate omega because this the main name of this bridge is to get omega. So from this and from this case, we can say we can isolate these two components, and we can remove j. Remove j means if you get j, this j to upward, it will become negative. So c, so the imaginary component will be something like this. So the imaginary z is equal to 0, c1 r2 r3. This is coming from this component, and r3 over c2 r1 is coming from this component. So we have something like this. Here we are missing something. We need to have omega here. So some part is missing here. So there will be omegas here. In this omega should come here, and this omega should come here. It is a error in the presentation. And then afterwards we can easily, like, you can, I will do the calculation here. C1 R2 R3 omega is equal R3 over C2 R1 omega. So we can get omega into one side and all the parts into another side. So in here it will become omega squared equal 1 over R1 R2 C1 C2. So then we can get the square root of it. So square root R1 R2 C1 C2. So you know 1 square root is also 1. So we can arrive at this expression. So in here, to simplify this, what we do is we take R1 equal R2. So these two components are equal, and C1 equals C2. So doing that, what happens is this will get much more simplified. So you know how I got this, right? Omega is equal sec I phi f to phi f, and so you can just so what we are interested in the frequency in hertz. So this is angular frequency. So you can just you know get it by so the 2 phi f and R1 R2 C1 C2 square root, and f is equal 1 over 2 phi. So you can arrive at this equation. I think you can see that. Okay. So that's how you arrive at this point. So now if we equate R1, R2 and C1 and C2, what happens is F equals 1 over 2 5 R. So let's say R1, R2 is equal R squared into C1, C2 both equal to C squared. So now then we can easily arrive at 1 over 2 5 R squared C squared square root R C. That's how we arrive at this expression. And when you have this expression, what we can so now we have equated R1 equals R2 and C1 equals C2. So what will happen is we have to consider about this real. So we took this expression from, so we derived this expression from real part, and this is from imaginary part. So we did changes to imaginary part. See, so this is the imaginary part. So imaginary part we change R1, R2, C1, C2. We equate all those things. So we have to do these changes into this also. So we took R1 equals R2, C1 equals C2. So that means these two will cancel out, right? So what happens is R4 will be equal to R3 plus R3. That means 2R3. R4 equals 2R3. I'm sorry for my handwritings. Okay. So what it means is, so when you equate R1 equals R2 equals R and C1 equals C2 equals C, you cannot ignore other parts. You have to choose R4 equals 2R3 because we have to have this condition also. So we have to satisfy this real component, the equation given by real component. So to do that, we have, when you are equating these two, you have to equate this one also. Okay, so that is yeah, that is one of the things you should know. And other thing, so when you use this R1 and R2, these two are in completely different locations. See, R1 is in here, R2 is in here. So both are variables. So what we do is we use something called mechanically ganked variable resistors. So what happens is, let's say they are in 5 kilo ohm